Hi, I'm Nicolina Page, and a few months ago I found out that I am autistic. And I say found out, which is true. At 35, I didn't know anything about autism until I was going through a very serious mental health crisis that really kind of feels like it had been building my whole life. And the medical professional I was working with pointed out how all of these things relate to autism and some other things. But really, I want to start sharing this journey because it's been a lot, and there is not a lot of research or information or resources or support groups for adult women with autism, for adults with autism in general, but women in particular are really missing from the scientific research literature, even recognized by researchers themselves. And really, the only things that I've had to be able to process this are other accounts from other adult women also diagnosed in their 30s, and how they've been able to reinterpret their life, find the words to explain this neurotype, because that's what it is. It's basically, it was such a relief. My speech is stunted it or whatever. It's because I'm learning to be myself, and I don't look like someone who's autistic or whatever that even means. Growing up, there was no knowledge of autism when I was a kid, at least not in this sort of quote unquote high functioning form or whatever form. The words are really not great or useful, but and this concept of masking. And I want to go over these kinds of terms because I think it's helpful to help my friends understand I'm going through, who I actually am, because I've been trying to be the version of who I was told I'm supposed to be my whole life, which at its core, just I had internalized deep self-loathing, and that who I was by nature was unlovable. I never understood why. And that is the existential sort of depression that peaked when my ability to function in society felt like it was really going out of control. And getting the diagnosis, or that about autism, understanding more about it, it's like, oh wow, this makes sense. I mean, what is known about the reason why there isn't a lot of research on women is because we are told really early in society how to act. It's very normal to correct women's behavior, little girls' behavior, and we are extremely empathetic. Like, I don't want to speak about autism in general because I'm still learning, but like, autistic people I feel like, have incredibly deep empathy on extremely just nonverbal levels. I'm actually a lot more nonverbal than I've ever allowed myself to be. I've been forcing myself to do things like eye contact and try to communicate in words, and I say try because it's really quite painful, and I want to share the way that I actually speak and process language and make word choices, because I had no idea it was so different. And to come back again, it's a neurotype, which means my brain processes stimuli and interprets data in my environment differently. And I think what I've learned through this process of embracing this, so this was a relief that I'm not at my core unlovable, and any experience that I've had with any close relationship, family member that was rough, nobody knew. Nobody knew who I was or how I was. I didn't know those things either. And a lot of the more that I learned about autism, because autism isn't about the symptoms, even though it's mostly identified as symptoms, and those symptoms are often identified in children because children are just themselves. They're not sort of trained out of their natural behavior yet. But when someone's been trained out of their natural behavior, it can be really confusing and disorienting. And so it was a big relief, but also kind of like being reborn at 35 when you're already in sort of like a crisis of where you belong in society, but you're also an adult. And the cool thing about it is that while there's a bunch of things that I do that aren't, I guess even the word neurotypical seems silly because it's really just, it feels like neurotypical is not that it's typical, it's just that's the type of brain and processing style that society, at least the structures in this country, seem to be built on. And if you don't process things, or those things are extraordinarily taxing on your nervous system, and I don't even have the words to describe. I think one thing that helps, because I am getting, I'm choosing to have medication to help with the stimuli, but it's basically, before that, it was like going through the world is like feeling such a degree of stimuli in my nervous system, like 1,000 knives stabbing me at the same time. And I can say that because when I take medication, that stops. And I can be like, oh, no wonder I couldn't do any of the other things that were already challenging. On top of that, like interpreting what other people say and the way that they mean it versus when people use abstract terms, which makes sense why I became a linguist, to try to understand what people were actually saying. But digressing, I just want to start this series of videos about this process because I wanted to wait until I maybe had some more knowledge or information or just routines, because to get this information again at 35 and be like, wow, now I know why I didn't feel like I ever knew myself. Now to figure out who I am and where I fit in and how I process, like actually allowing the way that my body naturally interprets the world, acknowledging the way that I process language is a little bit different. What do I do with that? And how do I take care of myself and live a world that's not full of physical, mental, and emotional pain? Because that's really actually what it's like, trying to fit in this world versus doing my own thing. But I need to survive, so we carry forward. And even the resources, I've been spending a lot of time trying to get medical support and autism-informed therapists or even occupational support, because I can go into, when I go into more of the details of this, again, they're superpowers, right? It feels like superpowers. I want to think of it like superpowers, to be, I think also no one knew I was autistic because there's this thing, and again, I'm learning language that other people have created that helps me communicate, because at least it's a certain kind of jargon that has a definition. So they call it special interests. So things that you obsessively study and feel really comfortable in. And luckily for me, that was academics. So I was really good in school because I could use that to hide from everybody in all of the uncomfortable situations. And I could be, feel like I was loved. And when you feel unlovable, you keep going towards the things where other people love and accept you. Now that I had this diagnosis, I've finally been able to start to love and accept myself. I've learned to explore who I am through performance art, creating nonverbal pieces based on giving and receiving love and acceptance with strangers, from conceptual constructions that I have more on my website. But there's a lot that I can offer the world, and there's also a lot of things that this world makes me feel really invalidated and disempowered, and I'm trying to learn how that is. And there's so many levels of things that are just even starting to share with people that I'm autistic, and like, well, what does that mean? Or what does it mean for how I interact with people and what expectations to have? To re-educate every single person is exhausting. To try to get help from different services, and the reason it took me so long to get any help was because the way I communicate is almost so literal, so direct. People found it, I guess, suspicious or whatever, but that's like, I'm just neurodivergent, and I can't access the resources for neurodivergence because there's not an understanding of that, I guess, or maybe there is better now. But basically, I'm also still looking for resources and support groups, and especially among adult women, because there's a certain set of things. I mean, in general, I feel so much better in other neurodivergent communities, and as I'm still trying to find them for me, it's, sometimes just by sharing, I found then the community comes to you. And I was always really, when I was been in crisis in the past few months, as I've been trying to adapt to this information and function in life, and having even more data to, like, I'm just sort of like in a big data overwhelm at this point, as well as sensory overwhelm and communication overwhelm, and just acceptance overwhelm, such as acknowledging that even though I'm a performer and actor and I can read lines and look into a camera or design pieces, I don't want to, so I'm not forcing myself to in this video, because I can think and speak better if I don't. And I don't show this side of me because I've been so masked, and so I also need to learn that it's okay to be me and be like this. But also, yeah, if people have information that's helped them, researchers who are looking for more women to study, that'd be fabulous. There's a lot of things I want to share about this process, and there's a lot of really beautiful things and sort of funny things about my life that now make sense. And I think, the fact that I didn't even understand what this was, I don't fault anyone for not either, and I can only speak to my own internal experience. And it's like, oh, well, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm just actually have a different hardware, and so my body is the only thing that can really tell me that, and me getting comfortable being that way in the world. And even if it does bother other people who I am naturally, also being okay with that and loving and accepting them, their right to that reaction and my right to exist the way that I am. So I think that's a good start. Thank you for sharing. I will share a link to the book. I was gonna show my favorite book, but there's a chihuahua in my lap right now. But I'll put a link to it in the description, and just by, it's an affiliate link to Amazon, which just means that if you buy anything from Amazon off of that link, then I'll get a little commission for free, because I need to, if I'm gonna live in a world where I can take care of my needs, I need to create my own world. So any little bit helps, but it is a really good book. I'm not affiliated with it at all. It's just, I want to share it anyway, so that's a way to support me if you want. Or you can look at my performance art, which is kind of wild in its own way, and is becoming a bigger and bigger way for me to express the side of myself in a way that I'm comfortable. This is not me very comfortable. This is me surrendering to what I share, what my experience is actually like compared to what I let people see. But my art is where my joy and life and love is. And so I hope you can enjoy that as well. I think the biggest thing I want to go towards is we're all special. We're all our own neurotypes. We all have so much going on. And in a world where we could all just give our gifts to the world, we all have different gifts. We don't all have to do everything. If we could all just live our full potential as gifts, like, what an incredible world we would have. And I hope to progress that view of neurodivergence and not trying to force us to be anything but our nature and to celebrate and be good humans to each other. Okay. Thank you.
Say goodnight, Goody.